We will start polishing the torso with the hips controller. As mentioned in the previous video, you should always start polishing the controllers that have the most influence or that move the most. In the case of the hips controller, it's gonna be the tilting motion and twisting motion. Since those are driven by the rotation, I've hidden all the other keys. Now I'm testing each curve to check what channel does what. The Z curve twist, the Y curve tilt. So I will start with the Y curve. I can now hide all the other curves. The hips motion is pretty critical on a walk cycle. If it's off, it won't be convincing. If you add too much motion, it will look too feminine. If you don't add enough motion, it won't look realistic or convincing. But there are some common rules, whatever the weight or whether your character is a male or a female. The hips will rapidly tilt as soon as the leg is supporting the weight. So basically, one frame after the contact pose, you will have a drastic change in your curve shape. And as soon as you get over the passing pose, it will slightly rotate the other way. A bit like the side-to-side motion we had with the center of gravity. So this is what I'm working on onto the curve right now. I'm getting a fast change in the motion over a couple of frames before transitioning into a slight plateau. Once I'm done with the first half of the cycle, I will remove all the keys after frame 16. I will then select all the keys from frame 0 to 16 and duplicate them and offset them between frame 16 and 32. My 2D cursor is already aligned with the 0 value. I can switch the pivot point to 2D cursor and then scale the keys from 16 to 32 by -1 onto the y-axis. Then I will duplicate frame 0 onto frame 32 and I will clean my curve. This way I have a perfectly mirrored motion of the hips. There you can scale this curve on the y-axis to either increase or decrease the tilting motion. Don't forget, this is something we will be able to edit later on as we also work on the twisting of the hips. So I'm considering this as a decent polish of the Y curve and I will jump on the Z curve. As I switch to the Z quaternion rotation curve of my hips, I must admit that this is quite a surprise, but the curve already looks pretty cool. I think I've nailed the twisting motion of the hips during the blocking stage. Since I don't really know what to do, I've double-checked the reference. If we have a closer look, we can see that the hips twist has a slight delay compared to the foot contact. As the character on the left reaches its contact pose, we can see the hips twisting forward for a couple of frames. So what I will do is simply offset the whole curve for a couple of frames and insert a keyframe on frame 32 and then set it to 3 and duplicate it on frame 0. I will then get rid of the keyframe on frame 34 and I will call the Z quaternion rotation polishing done. The X rotation is super subtle. I will just push the key on frame 8 a little downward. Back foot is pushing, it pushes a bit the hips forward and then it goes the other way. The X rotation motion is super subtle. Just duplicate this revised frame 8, 16 frames later on frame 24 and I will call the X rotation curve done. We can now jump onto the chest controller and work on its rotation. I will start by working on both Y and Z quaternion rotation at the same time. The Y rotation will drive the tilt, while the Z will drive the twist. My goal is to build a bit of contrast on the motion and slightly delay the motion of the chest compared to what we have done during the blocking. It's about 1 frame or half a frame, meaning that we'll push up a bit the key where the curve is starting to get down, like on frame 8. And I will push a bit down the keys where the curve is starting to raise, like on frame 24. Have a look to both polished curves, we can see that they are pretty smooth, meaning that they are going from one extreme to the other in a smooth fashion, without big changes in their shape, but we still recognize our usual pattern when we try to bring contrast between two extremes, with a slight plateau between those two extremes, and then the value of the curve changing a little faster during the passing or during the transitions. The fact that we get this plateau makes the shoulder easing into the extreme, as if there was some kind of momentum during the swinging of the shoulders. And the result is pretty close to what we have blocked, just trying to get cleaner curve with a bit more contrast. Playing a bit with the timing whenever the shoulder should raise or twist forward, just double check the reference frame by frame, and you should find the right timing. Then regarding the shape of the curve, been following all the lessons so far, you should be a little more comfortable with editing those curves, and those S shape with a slight plateau will be read as, for the Z quaternion rotation, an hold forward and backward during the twisting, and for the Y quaternion rotation, an hold upward or downward during those extremes. Once I was done with the Z and Y quaternion rotation, I switched to the X quaternion rotation. To be super subtle, because if you go extreme on this, your character will look drunk or unbalanced, and we will input more up and down using the Z location of this controller. In the end, I'm just taking the whole curve and offsetting it by 2 frames. Let the character bend a bit forward just after the impact, and as it's pushing, then it will start bending backward after the up pose. And the bend backward will be pushed as he falls down, as his body is getting lower and lower. So there is not that much editing on that curve, but just offsetting it in time on the x-axis by 2 or 3 frames. Then I will duplicate frame 32, set it to 3, move it on frame 0, and then get rid of any keys that goes beyond the frame 0 and the frame 32. Explained before, one extra detail I'd like to add is the up and down motion of the chest controller. It is currently driven by the Z location curve of the chest controller. The curve is currently flat because I haven't paused any location during the blocking stage. The idea is to animate the Z location curve based on the motion of the torso root. So I'm tracking the motion path of the torso root to double check whenever it's accelerating down, but you don't really need to do it. By simply going frame by frame, you will feel the moment the body is accelerating down and the moment the body is accelerating up. The idea is to create an overlapping motion of the chest. Whenever the body hits its slower pose, we will then, 1 frame later or 2 frames later, push the chest down. We will hold a bit this pose for a couple of frames as the body is raising. And then, just after the up pose, when the body is falling down, we will raise the chest. As the chest is dragging, it's falling but with a bit of delay. I've mainly worked the curve between frame 14 and frame 22 because this is the time where we have a big change in the cog position. And this is easier to work on this segment and then duplicate the keys around frame 0 and 32 than working the transition from frame 32 to 0. In the end, this bouncing motion will occur twice during our walk cycle. So once I've polished the one between frame 14 and frame 22, I can duplicate my keys so that it repeats 16 frames later. It's a very subtle bounce, but it brings a bit of texture to our motion. While we need to bring a bit of motion in the neck and head, we will keep it as subtle as possible. Unless you want to build a goofy walk cycle that could fit a drunk guy or even a baby that has a lot of trouble to hold his head in position, you don't want to move the head and the neck too much during your walk cycle or your character will look like a chicken. So for the neck, I will only work on the X quaternion rotation, when the character is moving up, lean a bit forward to make the head dragging. And when the body will be falling forward, the neck will move backward. And I will apply the same principle for the head. Right now, I'm just making sure that my cycle is repeating over my whole curve. So each time I find a spot where I feel like my animation is right, I can duplicate the keys and move them by 16 frames. This way, I'm sure I get a consistent cycle that looks right. There, I will do exactly the same thing, but this time with the head controller. Just track the tip of the nose or the chin of your character as a point of reference. And again, keep this motion as subtle as possible. You may not see it, just feel it, like the head is a bit wobbling but very subtly, so that we feel like the character is in control. If you feel comfortable enough, you can add a bit of Z quaternion rotation, create a bit of side-to-side delay in the rotation of the head, but it has to be super subtle. Even more subtle than this X rotation curve. So in the end, if you don't animate the other channel, that's perfectly fine. The torso polishing done, I'd like to add extra bit of details. I want to add a bit of bouncing on the pectoral muscle of the character. If you display the torso tweak layer of bones, you will find a controller per pectoral muscle. The idea is that we will be only animating one of them on its Z location, and then we will copy and paste its curve onto the other one. I will only animate the reaction of the pectoral muscle on the impact. If it was a female character, there would be a lot of motion, whether up and down, side to side, because women's breast is mainly made of fat. In the case of our character, I only want to create motion whenever we are reaching the impact frame. So as the torso travels fast down before the contact frame, I will slightly raise the Z curve to push the pectoral muscle up, hold for a couple of frames, and then I will push it down super fast. We create a slight S-curve that goes up and down with a smaller and smaller amplitude. It will create a slight bouncing effect that is losing strength over time. I was happy with this first bounce. As usual, I've duplicated all the keys and moved them back by 16 frames. From there, I can copy the curve, select the other controller, then double-click its Z location channel, get rid of all the key but the first and the last, and just press Ctrl V to paste the motion. Now both pectoral muscles move with the same bounce. If you want to push a bit your work cycle, you can apply the same effect on the butt of the character. But I will call the torso polishing done, and now we need to polish the shoulders and the arms.